Let's get some more reaction from Capitol Hill. Joining me now is Democratic Congressman Krishnamoorthi. I've covered a lot of administrations. I covered a lot of top-level state visits, meetings, summits, etc. I have not seen two adversaries shout at each other like that in a meeting. But here you have a U.S. president next to a U.S. ally defending itself against an ongoing Russian invasion, getting lectured to, berated. What was your reaction to witness that?
It was shocking. I think that, the person that celebrated today is Putin. We just ended up siding with a communist dictatorship over a freedom-loving democracy. And that makes all of us less safe, Jim, because it emboldens Putin. It makes him think that, when the U.S. Helps a friend or partner and ally, that, maybe we'll only be a fair weather friend. And that will potentially allow or enable or encourage him to attack others, in which case it might involve a NATO ally, and then, American troops could be involved.
What happens now? You have a U.S. senator openly calling for the elected leader of a country under attack to step down. What's your reaction to hearing that pressure, in effect, to interfere, right, in Ukraine's politics?
Well, that's not going to happen. And as you know, the Poles in Ukraine support Mr. Zelenskyy. But putting that aside for a second, I think we have to, right now, Trump and Vance and Zelenskyy have some personality issues. We have to put the interest of the United States above everything. And that is, we have to get to a negotiated agreement with regard to Ukraine. The other party that is looking at today's exchange in the White House is China. And Xi Jinping and the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, they are also looking at this very carefully, and they're also celebrating. And they're thinking, you know what? What if we were to move on Taiwan? How would the United States act or behave or conduct itself with regard to Taiwan? Would it do the same thing to Taiwan that it's doing to Ukraine? Today, Jim, we are moving toward conflict, both in Europe and the Indo-Pacific, because of this White House encounter.
Yeah, in my coverage over the last several years, travels, including to Taiwan, I have not met a single official military commander who did not make a connection between Taiwan and Ukraine. I want to quote from a statement you posted on X following this meeting. You said that our president, speaking of Trump, would rather curry favor with Vladimir Putin and the Kremlin and echo Russian talking points. Is that what you saw here? Do you think this was a deliberate effort by Trump to cozy up to please in some way the Russian president?
I don't know. I watched the exchange, and it looked like it kind of felt like they were going to get into a tussle over certain words, and I couldn't tell whether this was planned or deliberate or whatnot. But what I can say is that just the image was just horrible, and it really does show weakness on our part, that we can't control a meeting and make sure that we get to yes with our friends, partners, and allies, even as we are about to help broker an agreement between them and our adversaries. The last thing I was just going to say on that is, if Trump tries to cut out Zelenskyy in trying to negotiate some kind of agreement with the Russians, that starts sounding like what happened with Afghanistan. Remember, he cut out the Afghanistan government in negotiating with the Taliban, a really horrible agreement, if you recall. And guess what happened? This is exactly what's going to happen here. And this could be, Trump's Afghanistan. He has got to put, cooler heads have got to prevail. Rubio, Waltz, others have got to get into this and basically say, look, this is not about personalities. It's about the security of the United States. Let's get back to the table. Let's hammer something out.
We've seen in the wake of this meeting, European leaders unanimously express public support for Zelenskyy in the wake of this. That is a very public split between the U.S. and its treaty allies in Europe, which, by the way, this is not the first daylight we've seen. We've seen a U.S. president say, in effect, defending Europe is up to you. And we've seen those European leaders say, this is the new normal. We cannot rely on the U.S. Is that a bridgeable gap? Or is Trump here creating a rift, a break with some of America's closest allies?
It's a bridgeable gap, but the more and more that they start to take self-help measures, then it becomes more of a rift and one that's not bridgeable. So just as an example, one of the worst things that could happen is if countries within Europe start to militarize again, going against maybe what they wanted to do after World War II, or that is embedded in their constitutions. It would be the same as what's happening, for instance, in South Korea and Japan, where we see voices calling for nuclear weapons because we just look less reliable. They don't think the nuclear umbrella is there for them. And the worst thing in the world that could happen in Europe is for Germany to change its constitution or do things that could remilitarize, and then you have bigger problems on our hands. So I think we need to step back, get the personalities out of this, and get the adults at the table and bring things back together.
Congressman Raja Krishnamoorthi, thanks so much for joining.
Thank you so much.